Right. Okay, well, here we are. Have a fabulous guest with us today with his cup of tea, the Advertising Research Foundation led, inspired, driven and overall guru of social media research, Stephen Rappaport, bringing to us today his book, Listen First. This is a first for us since we're very good at talking, maybe not necessarily that good at listening. And you have him after a very long and very successful jaunt to Japan, where Listen First has now debuted in the Japanese language to entertain our Asian friends over there with words of what listening means in social media. Turning social media conversations into business advantage is what Listen First is all about. And I tell you what, forget about that. Forget about my mug. There is the fantastic cover shining out there. Must get that lighting fixed. Very warm welcome to you, Stephen. Thanks for joining us so early this morning.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Dave.
Joe, it's great to have you. Social media monitoring, social media research. I know as a small business owner, I get fazed just by social media. A lot of us don't know what to do with it. And now we're talking about what to actually do with it, what the result is going to be. So why don't you tell us a bit more about Listen First? Why do we need this book, Stephen?
Well, the reason that we need the book is because, excuse me, it allows us to really understand, or to understand what people are saying, and to interpret what they say from the standpoint of our businesses, and to understand them in their lives, and to better and through that to develop or adjust our business and marketing and communications to really meet the needs of our customers. But it's really about bringing them into our business, not just viewing them as a customer, a user, or somebody that we transact with.
Makes a lot of
So,
sense. The one
yeah,
thing that I found about the book was that you call it a playbook, and that's a dangerous place to be because as soon as you say playbook, it sounds like it's going to give me a handheld guide through what I need to do, and I think maybe it does. So are we saying through Listen First that this is something that every business owner should have that will help them through this fairly challenging landscape of what social media is and what we need to do with it?
yeah. The way that I organized the book is I didn't organize it for researchers. I organized it for business people. And the kinds of questions that business people ask is, what the heck is this? Right? How is it done? Where is it going? Right? And how's it used? So, so I believe really strongly in having evidence, right? And so the bulk of the book is case studies that I've synthesized to develop strategic principles, right? And also extract out tactical steps that you can take. So to be more specific, there's a section where each chapter is a specific business objective. So for example, if you want to grow your business, how do I discover new customers? So I've got 3 or 4 cases in there about companies that successfully found new customers, how they did it, and then take what they've done and develop that into a strategic principle, right? And then specifically, what did they do? What kind of advertising campaign did they develop, and what were the results? So it really is a playbook in that sense that if you've got a, an objective that you want to accomplish, right? This is a book that you can look up by objective how to specifically how to go about it and how to do it.
So it's not necessarily a book that you would have to read from start to finish. You can pick into it.
No, it's designed not to be read from start to finish. It really is meant to be, as you say, picked into. You should
Understand.
dip into it as you need.
Yeah, I think the one thing that resonated most strongly with me, Stephen, was the fact that I, we can use social media. Everybody can use social media, and everybody thinks it's easy to use. Everybody's set up all these pages. But there is, and I think there will be for years to come, we're in this really naive state right now where what now, right? What do we do now we've got the pages? People have just about overcome this theory that it's all about likes and it's all about followers. We're now thinking, we had this talk early on where what's the ROI of social media? And we've been through this so many cycles. But in actual fact, the only people who are going to decide the ROI or decide whether those likes, fans, followers are useful are the likers, the followers and the fans themselves. How do we start understanding more about what these people want and what they're talking about then? Because that's really what the book speaks to, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, here, it's a really it's a really interesting area because on the one hand there's this desire for measurement, right? Because what people started saying 10 years ago was the most measurable medium because the what people do leaves a trail. And so a lot of the measures that we use are are these counts. But what's lacking is relating those counts to a business outcome. Those linkages really have not been made very clearly yet. Because I'm working on a project I call it the Digital Metrics Field Guide. And what I've learned so far is how to do this, I've taken 80 award-winning case studies and I've deconstructed them into their overall campaign goal, their individual objectives, and then the metrics that we use to measure the objectives. So many of them are digital or social measures. And what I learned was that most of the measures that were used to demonstrate effectiveness were what I call beauty contest metrics. So it's like, well, we expected a 30% increase in fans and we got 3,000%, or, but so what? Because it's just a measure of activity. So, and it doesn't relate to a business outcome. So the challenge to really understand social media is to develop measures that actually uh, speak to the business impact and the business outcome. And as I mentioned, those linkages are for the most part not there yet. They take effort to develop, and they probably need to be developed custom for each brand. And so, so that I've seen some progress along those lines, but it's very small right now. The Anyway, so I'll stop there, and I'll get to the second part of the answer because um, the second part of the answer that um, is that listening is really a humanistic act, right? It's not just, oh, what are people saying, and count it up and trend it up. It's like, oh, this word is going up and this word is going down, and the sentiment is this and that. Uh, that's the way that a lot of it is done, especially in the social media monitoring. And I know people will disagree with me, but
That's
um,
part of the fun.
yeah, no, well, it's just that I come from a social research background, so so unless there's really some sort of model theory or framework as to why those measures are important, um, I tend not to value them very highly. So, and also when you meet with large companies and they say we don't know what to do with the data, it's a
That's
problem.
most of us.
Yeah, I mean, it's really, and there's all kinds of stories I could tell, but I won't. But
One for next time.
yeah, yeah, over a beer in the UK. But and so and so there's another part of listening that is less understood or less appreciated, and that is to really uh, listen with our third ear, to really be open to what people are saying, and to take it in, and to use it to challenge the way that we think about our customers and our business. And and this is where uh, being a very sensitive analyst makes a lot of sense. And it's where I've seen some of the best sort of breakthroughs in terms of listening. And I'll just give one example. One is one that I talked about in Japan. It's a motorcycle, Suzuki Hayabusa. It's the fastest production motorcycle in the world. And it's been marketed here in the States for 10 or 12 years with a racing heritage. So when you look at their images, their brand imagery and things, it's all about like guys in the leather suits, on tracks, leaning over with their knees, just about scraping the pavement, and
It's a
so it's
position
all,
I've never been in, but I can relate.
I can't even imagine it. But, you know, But I do actually on my bike, on my bicycle, I kind of, so
I've heard you're
imagine,
great with cars. I just didn't know you were such a spin on motorbikes.
yeah, but then you're like really like, oh, anyway. So it scares me. But or I can't imagine myself doing that. Let's put it that way. Um, so 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 every couple of years, or they bring out a new rev of the bike, and so they make it a little lighter. They put a bigger engine. They make it higher performance, and they keep its lead. So about 5 or 6 years ago, they hired an agency, and the agency looked at the 30-month sales data after sort of the new edition was launched. And what they discovered was that when they looked at the ethnicity of people who were buying the bike, 40% were non-white, right? So Hispanic things, and they delved a little, and so it was very urban. So it's like, what is that about? Because for years and years and years, it's always been, right, essentially a suburban, a suburban or a rural, white boys, sport. So that's a that's a type of listening that I call behavioral listening, because there are three. I think that when you're listening, or this is how I define it. Um, there's the conversation, which is what most people focus on, but there's also the behavior, and there's also the emotions. So, so what is so if you look at a trend, right? What is a trend really, right? Now, I ask that question all the time, and usually the answer I get is it's at least 3 points that you draw a line through. And yes, that technically is what a trend is. But if you're talking about what people are buying or attending or something like that, the trend is something in addition. They're not just points on a line, they're expressions of human interest and action. So that's why I call it behavior. So if you look at it that way and you ask yourself, gee, look at what people are doing and how they're expressing themselves, that to me is really like a little listening leap. So if you're open and sensitive to that, then it leads you other ways. And that's what it did for Suzuki. It led them to do a more full-blown listening. It led them to do an ethnography. It led them to do some traditional market research so they can size their market. And what they discovered was that they had an urban market that was very different from the performance market. It was all about hip hop and music and mingling and doing like hip hop with their motorcycles. It's really an amazing culture. And
Wow.
yeah, absolutely fascinating, hidden, undiscovered until they did this little bit of listening. Then, with, and then they developed a social media campaign, all centered around music, that's now in its 6th year. So it wasn't just, oh, look at that. Here's a little trend we can capitalize on for a year or two. Instead, right, they brought that consumer into their brand, and year after year after year, they're deepening their understanding and the relationship and things, and it's successful. So so this is what I mean by listening with the third ear and really being open up. Because imagine, Dave, right? If you're a Japanese businessman operating in Tokyo, wherever, and you know, and you're being told, hey, wait a second, people are like dancing in the streets and dressing up their bikes and modifying them and turning them into characters. What what are you thinking? But then to have the guts to actually say, okay, maybe there's something going on here, and then change, and then add a second strategy. That takes real bravery. So this is all part of listening.
This is insane. We are patching ourselves into our consumers' stream of consciousness, and there's no other way we've ever been able to do it before to this level of detail, I believe, than social media. The good-looking guy that was talking to you just before is Stephen Rappaport. He's the author of Listen First, Turning Social Media Conversations into Business Advantage, giving us a really good insight into how important social media monitoring and social research is to any size of business, lest you forget that small businesses are as important as the big boys. I have to tell you now, this is not the case, and Stephen has proved that talking to us right now about his book. I want to talk to you about some of the case studies, because in the book you've covered the gamut of strengths from the really small towners to the really big brands. And I love the fact that you're able to relate to people. It doesn't matter what size business they're in. What was the most surprising experience for you while you were writing the book in terms of finding out about how important this whole listening thing is to us as business people?
I say that the most illuminating, I don't know that anything really surprised me, but what I did find was what really illuminated, and that was that when it comes to listening, most people think about it as a customer service channel, right? Or something for reputation management. It's like, oh, they're saying bad things about us. It's like, what are we going to do? Or we'll write directly to that person, we'll engage with them. But what I really hope to show through this book is the spectrum of objectives and types of research that listening is used for. It's not just those two that I mentioned. There's in one section of the book, which is all about how is it used. It's 12 chapters. Each chapter is a marketing objective. It's not like some sort of social media you know theory or something or something like that. But it's really about how do you use it to grow your business, and that has been the most eye-opening thing for a lot of people. Because you mentioned at the top of the program that I was in Japan recently, but the book is in 5 languages, and the reason that it's in 4 others besides the U.S. is just for this reason: is that when people see how broadly applied listening can be for objective achievement as well as research, this is what makes them really excited, and this is why other countries have worked with me to customize this book to their market. So the Japanese and the Italian editions were developed in conjunction with local companies to develop new case studies and add new material that focuses exclusively on their market, so that it's as relevant as possible in each market. So in the Italian edition, for example, I worked with a company, Demoscopia, and we developed 10 new case studies just for the Italian edition, plus some other material. So we interviewed Barilla and Unicredit, which is the largest bank, and Fiat, and Ferrero, which makes Nutella, and 6 others. Amazing. And then in Japan, we invited academics and business leaders to write essays for the book, and then we put together some roundtables with advertisers and agencies to talk about listening and its applications, where it's going, where it's not, challenges, cultural differences, all that kind of stuff. So it's more than a book, and I'm not like a self-aggrandizer or anything like that,
Well,
but
you can afford to be this one time.
but it's really in the conversation. It's a movement. It's not a book. It is so striking to me that the way that this book is being integrated into the world is really quite something. And there's 3 or 4 more other languages that are kind of in very early stages of discussion and development.
But you raise a really good point here. When we talk about cultural sensitivities and you're looking out there and everybody's talking about the BRIC countries, the Brazil, the Russia, the India, the China, you've got Italy covered, you've got Japan covered, you've got all these other big countries covered. But in many ways, when we're doing business, I almost feel that culturally we're different state to state and county to county. I mean, you can go as meta as you like with this stuff. But I think the one challenge we've got, and this is where social media can really be useful, can't it? Because you can go into demographics, psychographics, regional demographics. You must be thinking ahead now and thinking, well, I could take this as far as I want.
Oh, absolutely. It's I'm just going to get a little personal here, Dave, but it's really something. I mean, I've been working on listening or its predecessors since I was an undergraduate, where I had really the opportunity to work with professors who were pioneers in in a type of research called media content analysis. And I did that in graduate school. And for years and years and years, I've, I've always used it in my work. And around, in the 80s, tried to create a business that would do it. And it was always too early and, or it's too expensive because when I started doing this, there was no internet. Publications weren't online. There were hardly any online databases. So it all had to be done manually. We would take newspapers and magazines and rip them apart and measure them with rulers and all kinds of stuff. But that's the way the work was done back then. So, so, uh, so the principles of doing the work, though, have really not changed very much. But what is important and what you really put your finger on is getting at the cultural differences that can be expressed in the different ways that people write. So you've got kind of a technology that's shared. You've got research principles and practices that are applicable and generalizable. But it takes that analytic sensitivity to the culture that really brings it forward. So in Japan, for example, they were very concerned about listening to other people and all of that. All of those things that we think about when we think of Japan, right? Closed, unwilling to express themselves, and things like that. So when I went there, it was really like I had stepped back in time a little bit about 3 years ago to about 2009. Now they'll get to 2012 much faster, but because they have to work through these issues, where so because they're very concerned about how people present themselves, um, you know, and all of that. Where in the States, it's quite different. So in Japan, I was really educating them about these other uses. In Italy, it's really very different. In Italy, so far, of all if there are country differences, one of the most dramatic is in Italy. And because they are so sensitive to what people are saying. They get the nuances. They challenge their thinking. It was the most advanced interpretive listening that I've come across. And um, and I have my little theory about that, which is that so much of Italian art, music, and things is and religion is symbolic. Uh, so I think that they're really good at sort of interpreting symbols, and not just looking at the literal, that appears before them.
Yeah.
So they can really kind of get underneath all of that because, with a lot of religious art, just go back to Art History 101, it's like, oh, well, this figure represents that and this figure represents this, and right. And it's like, wait a second, it's like this painting is all coded, So I think that they're really good at decoding. And when you think about
I think
some
we
of
blame Da Vinci Code and Dan Brown for that. I think that's perpetuated the myth that the Italians know it all when it comes to codification. But as well, it's the romantic thing, isn't it? And I think
yeah,
romance breeds great listening powers because you have to seduce your
yeah,
partner, you have to know more about what they're about. And there comes no more romantic race, Stephen, let me tell you this, than the Italians. They know how to do it right.
yeah. So and I actually, when I gave my talk over there, I I developed a talk from all of the Italian interviews and case studies that we did, and and um, and the sort of theme of it was changing or challenging our mental models, which they were all doing, which doesn't really happen here in the States very much. Here people tend to look more for um, validation, reification, right? Assurances that things are still going on. But over there, they were really open to uncertainty and maybe we don't understand and let's really think about this. So there's that. Now, I want to get back to the cultural differences point, is that in America, and this is something I talk about, but it's not really, I think, addressed as well as it could be, and that is that America it's so multicultural, right? Because we have so many, immigrants and races and ethnicities, and within all of that, there's generational differences. So there's levels of acculturation and because I was talking with New York City has 5 boroughs. One of them is called Queens, and it's the one place in the world where over 120 languages are spoken.
It's like a mini continent.
Yeah, it's it's exactly what it is. And I would and actually I was talking with a cousin of mine who works at a college in Queens, and she said that there's over 100 different languages spoken on campus. So if exactly. So, but all the learning is in English, of course. So, so what's really interesting is, is like who's doing the listening and how much cultural sensitivity and understanding can they bring to it, you know? So so I think that one of the ways maybe of improving or advancing listening in the States is to have people with greater cultural insight and understanding, doing the listening and interpretation. But so far I haven't seen it as widespread as I think it needs to be. And some are
I,
doing.
I
I
think
like,
we've covered the world of listening. We've covered the world of listening through the world itself, which has been interesting today. And I never in a million years thought we'd go to Japan via Italy and wax lyrical on all the great stuff that happens over in the world. And it realizes to me that the global village is much more than that. And everybody talks about the world is shrinking, but I think that is actually doing a disservice to the world itself. And I think it's doing a disservice to those businesses who are seeking competitive advantage by understanding the nationalities, by understanding the sensitivities, and you make that and you really bring that into sharp focus. Earlier on, we talked about Art History 101. I'd like to wrap things up slowly by talking about Listening 101. So we read the book, Listen First. And you rightly pointed out earlier on, Stephen, that great thing about this book is that you break it down into specific benefits rather than, they are chapters, but they're masquerading as different ways. So depending on what point you're at in the business life cycle, if you're ready to start on product development, there's a section there specifically for you. If it's all about understanding about how customers can kind of help you with focus groups, there's stuff about that. It's very intelligently written. But if I'm a small business now who has got Listen First on order from Amazon or any good real life bookshop, I want to know how I need to get started, and it's going to take me a while to get through and try and figure out, because if I'm a small business, which I am, I'm always confused about everything. Listening maybe isn't necessarily the one thing that I wake up in the morning and go, this is what I'm going to do today. But can you break it down and simplify it so almost like we have a first step, what you believe that every small business should be doing now if they want to seize the opportunity that is listening, to get closer to their customers and to almost evolve themselves into more of a customer-centric company by reaching out and attaching themselves to these streams of consciousness that are going on out there today?
yeah, when it comes to small, because I've built and run some small companies, and first and foremost, it's like be with your customer. I mean, forget the technology, forget social media, forget all of that. Right? But it's just like be with your customer. Ask them questions about them. And uh, I actually gave a talk on this a year or so ago. But I helped my mother build a restaurant, and I did all the cook. I have a cooking background, and I did all the cooking. And it was a small place, 40 seats, on a small island with a small population. But but on the weekends, the population was like nearly double in size because there were a lot of boatyards there and sailing schools and things like that. So, um, so the, so the, so when you open a restaurant, a lot of people open it with the idea of the type of restaurant that they like to have. Right? and the type of customer that they'd like to have, because they want to see themselves in a certain way. But that's like the quickest route to failure, right? Because, a restaurant, like any other business, it's a marketing company, right? And, and the food is important, but you're really marketing an experience, for people. So, or creating an experience for people. And so I went up to this little tiny island and I asked people, what kind of place would you like? Not, I'm thinking of building this or whatever. Because if you tell people that you're going to do something, oftentimes they'll say, hey, that sounds pretty good, or, but what I wanted to do is I wanted to find out from them what kind of place and experience they wanted. So, and in contrast, there was a woman that uh, so so but you also have to put what they say, you have to interpret what they say or challenge what they say. So now this is a small little island, and my mother went up there, and people would say, what we really need is a Chinese takeout, because the nearest one, because it's 2 bridges to get to the mainland, and they don't deliver and stuff like that. So no, I'm serious. So actually, a woman from the city, New York City, she listened to that, and she created this Chinese restaurant called. Her name was Diane. She had this cute name, Taipan Diane. Right?
Perfect for a podcast. I must speak to her.
So what happens is people go there one. So what happens with Chinese food? How often do you eat it? Especially on an island with 4,000 people. So yeah, so people told her, yes, we like this, but she didn't really she didn't evaluate it properly from a business standpoint, and she went out of business about 6 months later, very unhappy, lost a lot of money, ended up suing the landlord because the landlord said, you'll be successful, you know. And so the first thing is to listen to your customers, right? But interpret what they're saying and put it into your own business, you know, evaluate it from your own business standpoint. That's really, really important. What we did is and the reason that my mother didn't do it is that there are companies that specialize in building, financing, and leasing Chinese restaurants. There's a whole Chinese capital industry. And what they'll do is they'll build it and then they'll lease it to somebody who will then work it off, you know. So, you know what I mean? So they said, no, this place is too small. You need at least 50,000 people to support one Chinese restaurant.
There's context.
Yeah, very important. So when it comes to listening, there's this. I wish that I had coined it, which is if you don't listen to your customers, you won't have a business. If you only listen to your customers, you'll be out of business. So this is the very first thing.
Ow.
Yeah. Which has nothing to do with social media. It just has to do with being open, listening, and challenging what people are telling you.
I'm scribbling that bit out of the book as we speak, if I can.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's part 2.
Yeah. The second thing is related to that is always check and triangulate on what people are telling you, right? Which we talked about a little bit. Now, if your business is larger and people are writing about your business or your category online, then you can do some online listening. Now, for many businesses, people in their conversations don't talk about brands. So now, if you're an auto company, about 50% of conversations about cars are branded, right? Because you don't just say, gee, I bought a really nice sedan. No, you're going to say you bought an Audi 4 or, Chevy this or whatever. But if you're talking about food, only 5% of the conversations are branded. So even in categories where 50% of the conversations are branded, 50% are not, right? So you have to develop a sensitivity and an ability to listen for non-branded category conversations. It's very important because a lot of people that said, I can't find what I'm looking for, people aren't talking about it. No, they're talking about it, but not in ways that you expect. So being able to find and listen to the category conversations as well as the branded conversations is very important in listening. So that means finding where the conversations are. And once you start doing this, now you're starting to engage in a research program. So it's, what do we need to learn about that people are talking about? Where are they talking about it? To what degree of specificity are they talking about it? Right? Where are the conversations that are the most valuable and important? Right? Then you get to more of, okay, we're able to locate the people, we're able to locate the conversations, and then you have to start making sense of it. And there, what's really important, and this is a skill that, that you can develop, which is to start, analyzing the conversation. So that means putting it into buckets. Right? But then the question is, what buckets do I use?
And all will be revealed in the book, Stephen. I must stop you there for the pure and simple reason that you're in danger of giving the whole goddamn book away, and I want people to go out and buy this stuff because you've given away so many great secrets and recipes already on this chat. Do you know, I'm really impressed with this stuff. I think it's great. And I must say, this is the hallmark of a grown-up conversation about social media, which isn't just about social media, as you made that very good point earlier, but it shows how far we've come in that we haven't one time mentioned a single social media platform. And if that isn't proof that we're moving in the right direction, I don't know what is. Now, everybody's been listening to you for a long time now, and you've got some great tips out, but invariably, after they've bought the book, Listen First, they'll want to continue that listening process. So how can people listen to you again once they've finished the book? Where do they go to find out more about the life and times of Stephen Rappaport and what's coming next?
Oh, well, one is I think that they should download your podcast and watch it religiously every evening, and we'll create a study guide for people if they like. No, anybody, no, anybody can write me or call me anytime. My email address, they can just write me at the ARF, that's rappaport@thearf.org, or call me or link in with me. Actually, linking in is a good way. Actually go to LinkedIn and link in with me and things. That's really a good way. I do have a blog for the book, so you can go to the blog, listenfirst.thearf.org. And I do have a book that that I'm thinking through, which
we have an exclusive, folks. Pretend that we do, even if we don't.
Well, I did this study on privacy, which I presented a couple of weeks ago, and because what I learned was that there is no one way that people think about privacy. There's three ways that people think about privacy regarding listening, and each one, and in order to accommodate each one, you have to have three different sort of positions or strategies for privacy. So, this is really a revelation because a lot of people and organizations who are concerned with privacy are always coming up with a one-size-fits-all policy, right? Now, most of it is legally driven, right? And it's just that I thought, and I started asking a question like, how did you bring consumers into your privacy policy development? And nobody said that they did. So I said, well, you've got these policies out there. I wonder how people perceive them. And that led me to do this research.